Job 25 verse 1-6, through the Bible. Chapter 25. Theme: Bildad's third discourse. We are now going to have the final word from Bildad. Fortunately, it is brief. I think the light is beginning to dawn on Bildad. He is a very thoughtful and intelligent man. Perhaps he is beginning to think, if Job is guilty, why doesn't he break under all this bombardment of argument that we have given to him? He has still maintained his integrity. He stood up against it. Remember that Bildad is the traditionalist. He believes God follows certain laws. Things have been done this way for 1,000 years, so why would there be a change? He is the scientist who pours life into the test tube and says, "See, this is what happens every time." The law of God is that he will punish sinners. And yet he wonders why Job doesn't break if he is a guilty sinner. There are men today, both theologians and scientists, who speak so learnedly, especially about the creation of the earth. They seem to know exactly what God did under certain circumstances 2 billion years ago. We have a whole brainwashed generation, but I am, perhaps, one of the biggest skeptics you have ever known. This gross assumption of knowledge is simply not justified. My friend, they don't even know what is going to happen tomorrow, so how can they speak with such authority about what happened 2 billion years ago? I think they are simply kidding themselves and those who listen to them. I get a little weary of them all. Does anyone really know exactly what the first chapter of Genesis means? I think that if Moses were here today and could hear some of these scientific explanations, he would smile and say, "My, what those boys have learned since I wrote Genesis. They seem to know more than I knew about it." Both Bildad and our contemporary intellectuals need to remember that God's ways are past finding out. Then answered Bildad the Shuhite, and said, "Dominion and fear are with him. He maketh peace in his high place." Job 25 verse 1 and 2. He has an exalted notion of God, which is good. Is there any number of his armies? And upon whom doth not his light arise? Job 25 verse 3. A better translation would be, whom doth not his light pass? In other words, God is the supreme one. How then can man be justified with God? Or how can he be clean that is born of a woman? Job 25 verse 4. Now here is a good question. It is a question he should have asked at the beginning. Although he has asked the right question, he doesn't have the right answer. Behold, even to the moon, and it shineth not. Yea, the stars are not pure in his sight. Job 25 verse 5. Well, we have been to the moon now, and we have found that it is a pretty dirty place. It is covered with dust and dirt, volcanic ash, not a nice place to have a picnic. It is not as romantic up there as it is down here when the moon is shining and you're out with your girl for the first time. Mars seems to be no cleaner. The stars are not pure in his sight. How much less man, that is a worm. And the Son of Man, which is a worm. Job 25 verse 6. There are those who don't like to face that. I like it. People today talk about us having come from a worm. We haven't come from a worm, friends. We are worms. That is what we are now in God's sight. How can a man who is born of woman be clean in God's sight? That's the question. It is a good question. It is the supreme question. Bildad did not have the answer. Only the Lord Jesus Christ has the answer to that question.